So, full disclosure, I've got a feeling deep in the pit of my gut that this album, the work from Rivers of Nihil, is going to be very divisive, much more so than anyone is anticipating. Couple that with the fact that the Metal Meltdown, this channel, has attracted some very interesting comments from some very interesting characters over the course of the past couple weeks, and I can't help but get the feeling that I might need this right about now. You know, for good luck, just in case. Anywho, let's talk about the work. I've been paying very close attention to Rivers of Nihil ever since they dropped The Conscious Seed of Light back in 2013. I've bought every single one of their albums on either CD or vinyl. I was a big fan of Where Owls Know My Name when it dropped back in 2017, and just like virtually every other metalhead on the internet, it became one of my favorite albums of that year. I've seen them live multiple times throughout the decade, opening for the likes of Obituary, Cryptopsy, The Faceless, Cattle Decapitation, and many more. And I would feel very comfortable right now saying that this band is perhaps one of the most unique and exciting and iconic technical and progressive death metal bands to pop out of the genre in a very long time. And as a result of all of this, I was obviously very excited to hear the work. I was especially excited when the band began dropping promo singles like Clean and Focus. Both of which, I'll admit, I wasn't super into at first, but with time they have grown on me immensely. I would feel comfortable saying that they are both some of the best material that Rivers of Nihil have ever penned and produced. Through both of these tracks, it was made very clear very quickly, at least to me, that Rivers of Nihil intended to expand on the successes of Where Owls Know My Name, namely its emotional and introspective peaks and valleys, and its explosive yet versatile display of saxophone-infused progressive death metal. But what I wasn't expecting, and in turn what I imagine a lot of other death metal fans haven't been expecting, was for Rivers of Nihil to pretty much completely embrace progressive metal on this album. The songs are very lush, very evocative, very cinematic and introspective. There is a concept that deals with a lot of critical inward thinking on relationship building, on mental health and awareness. Saxophone has been further infused into the core of the sound, unlike on Rivers of Nihil, where it was very much a bonus feature, an additional texture. Here it is a vital component, as are keyboards and synthesizers and clean vocals and harmonies and melodies. There's also a surprisingly strong emphasis at times on more traditional songwriting tricks and techniques. Like, there are a lot of guitar solos that evidently are influenced by like classic prog and hard rock and alternative rock, and there are a lot of more straightforward hooks that do feel like they could have been pulled from like Dream Theater or maybe even Between the Buried and Me on some of their more accessible material like Coma Ecliptic. I mean, don't get me wrong, death metal is still very much an ingredient here, a pretty spicy and potent one at that, as there are punishing barrages of tech death brutality to be found across the record. But I would say that this record is aesthetically and spiritually more influenced by the likes of Opeth and Devin Townsend than it is by perhaps Atheist or fucking Cattle Decapitation or whatever the fuck else. Opening track The Tower starts this off on an intentionally somewhat monotonous note with some very mysterious and shadowy yet sensual keyboards and saxophones building tension. Jake's vocals are kind of manic and miserable here. He kind of sounds like he's very quietly singing a sad song to himself in the shower, like something really bad just happened to him, especially as he continues to repeat over and over again stuff like, "It's my fault," "It's no use." At which point Rivers of Nihil then quite bluntly respond, "Ha, fuck you, no there isn't," then whapping you over the head with some incredibly intense, death metal aggression, fierce gutturals, crushing guitar work. There's still an air of optimism, and the size and the scale makes this feel more akin to some Devin Townsend material than it does to anything Rivers of Nile have done beforehand, but regardless, it's a pretty intense moment on the album. The glaring contrast alone makes this an incredibly jarring climax to the song. Like, it's hard not to be taken aback by just how heavy it is. And things don't exactly slow down on the next track, as Dreaming Black Clockwork practically rocket propels itself forward with a seemingly endless barrage of groove-laden guitar and percussive beatdowns. There are so many fat, bassy, genty grooves here, so much sharp guitar work, so many abrasive vocals and blast beats. There are some more atmospheric segments spliced throughout the track that do allow you to catch your breath for just a wee fucking bit. Though be warned, you're not exactly safe in some of these parts either. In fact, I found myself consistently feeling just as uneasy in some of these segments as I did in some of the more typical Rivers of Nile tech death brutality. And from here on, this album continuously grows weirder, darker, more personal, and more introspective and more provocative in a remarkably small amount of time. The aforementioned Focus and Clean, for instance, I'm happy to report are even more poignant and even more powerful in context of this full studio album than they were as standalone singles, than they ever could have been, frankly, with Focus's very triumphant and anthemic chorus standing as one of the most cathartic in the entire album, whereas some of the more classic psychedelic and prog rock inspired soundscapes of Clean make for a much more engaging and cinematic kind of experience now that we have it in context of the work as a full album. Shortly after this, you also have The Void from Which No Sound Escapes, which does a really great job at contrasting these very gentle and evocative and quiet prog rock sections with this emotionally bombastic progressive death metal. It is monumental in size and scale, not just literally, but emotionally as well. It honestly does feel as though Rivers of Nile themselves are breaking out of some kind of void, be it a literal one, perhaps a physical barrier that has stopped them from doing something, or something they've conceived in their minds. I don't really know, but I do know that it makes for an incredibly powerful moment. Admittedly, I'm not as into More or Episode, the tracks that follow. They're by no means terrible, but they do feel somewhat more formulaic and derivative in comparison to everything else on this record. But thankfully, the album does end on a fantastic note with the 1-2 hit combo of Maybe One Day and Terrestria 4 Work, the latter of which is one of the most brutal and complex pieces of music on the entire album and that Rivers of Nile have ever presented us with, whereas the former is an incredibly beautiful and lush and downright stunning kind of classic prog rock ballad, very much in the vein of like modern Opeth and even material from Steven Wilson and Porcupine Tree. The way that the band has handled the actual concept of this album too, as simple as it is when you really look at it, is remarkably genius, because instead of dealing with any particular personal issue from any particular person in the band, Rivers of Nile intentionally keeps things very broad, making it very easy for you to just kind of implant your own experiences onto the record, and thus making it very easy for you to immediately connect with it. The only legitimate concern I have would probably be directed towards the sound mix. It's pretty solid for the most part, but at times it can be also kind of muddy and sterile. Everything is so dense and so heavily compressed that sometimes things just unintentionally end up blurring together, and things only stick out only when Rivers of Nile really begin to emphasize the heavier elements and the more intense elements of their sound. This, coupled with the fact that there are a few legitimately weak songs like More, Episode, and especially Wait, which, honest to God, sounds like some really shitty Devin Townsend Dream Theater knockoff with a really crappy classic rock-inspired guitar solo. Just, ugh. all of this kind of prevents me from being as over the top enthusiastic as I want to be. I want to give this a 4.5 out of 5. That's what my heart says. But my gut, you know, the more objective part of my body that's usually never wrong, says it's a 4 out of 5. And I don't know about y'all, but I always trust my gut. My gut is never wrong. Warts and all, this is a great record. Not a perfect record, and it maybe does fall somewhat short of Where Owls Know My Name in my personal opinion, but a great record nonetheless. I am extremely excited to see how people will respond to this album, extremely excited to see how Rivers of Nihil continue to expand upon this sound, and perhaps with that in mind, if they do fully evolve into a prog metal band, I can very much picture them abandoning the death metal influence entirely on a future studio album at this point. With this in mind, I think it's fair to say that anyone expecting a more straightforward kind of tech death record from Rivers of Nihil would probably abandon them from here on out. I can understand why. I mean, it's disappointing, but not unexpected. This is clearly a band that's only going to continue growing more progressive and growing more experimental and ambitious with time, and I very much look forward to seeing it. The work, 4 out of 5. Holy shit. What a great fucking album. What a great fucking experience. Damn. Fucking damn, dude. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press this button right here. And thank you for watching. Make sure you press this button right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.